Historically, British citizens are a difficult audience for politicians to reach. Yet, even after regaining the right to vote, not everyone will be rushing to the ballot box in July. So, with millions of votes now up for grabs, how do political parties plan to win them? I took shelter from the sun to put this question to Tony Lawton from Labour International and Stuart Pallister from Lib Dems overseas. So, Stuart, what are you doing to try and reach voters now that so many more have got the opportunity to register and to vote?
Well, actually, since January, for several months now, we've been trying to communicate with people via digital channels, mainly social media, to get them to go to a website where we're explaining all the change in the regulations, basically, in the legislation. So hopefully we've pushed some along already to encourage them to go to the government website and register, but we're going to have to ramp it up now, basically.
And Labour, let's look at it this way. Are you now thinking, how am I going to not just get them to register, but actually to vote Labour?
Well, that's the problem. It's a bit like herding cats. There's a lot of voters out there, but we know from the figures that very few of the people who were already eligible to vote before this change actually voted.
About 20%.
I think it was actually less than that. I looked at there's a research paper in the House of Commons Library which I looked at this morning, which says that in the last election there were 230,000 people who registered to vote, but there's about 5 million people abroad, of whom about half would have been eligible before the 15-year rule changed, which is probably not much more than about one in 10. So yeah, it's not a lot of people.
What are you finding is on the mind of expat voters?
Well, I've been keeping track of what expats are saying on social media sites, Brits abroad and so on. So there are a lot of issues, like mainly with the visas. It's a major issue. Residency visas, people wanting to come here. The 90 to 180 day rule, which we're campaigning actively to change. And those are the
do you think then it's those issues rather than looking back at what's been pretty chaotic in Parliament for the last 4 years or so? It's rather than those issues that are going to drive people's voting. It's what affects them as expats?
Well, I think those are contributory factors, because I think that factors like the NHS, social care, because if you've got elderly parents. Back in the UK, it's a major issue.
Let me be very blunt with you here. So, some people will say in Britain, look, you've been out of the country for an awful long time, well over the 15-year time period.
Yeah, I've been out of the country 40 years.
You have. And many will say, why should Stuart, why should Tony have the right to vote?
No, and so I sympathise with that. However, when it came to Brexit, I was not able to vote, and that's had a major impact on my life. So I would like to think that I can vote on issues that...
I think there's a very, very simple answer to that. The fact is, those who've retired and moved from Britain have an immediate... that what happens in Britain has an immediate impact upon them. The state pension. If they've got a personal pension, whether that goes up or down depending upon the stock market, interest rates on their savings.
It's interesting you said particularly that you had no say in the Brexit referendum. Looking at the voting record, it was actually the Lib Dems and Labour who did not want to extend the franchise. So do you hold them to account for that?
I thought the Labour Party's attitude the last time there was a vote on this, about 4 or 5 years ago before this change, was pretty appalling. I watched it on television and there were Labour MPs getting up saying, all these people who moved abroad, they've just gone there for tax reasons and things like that. Totally unsympathetic. But what they really meant was they thought that if this was changed, more would vote Tory than would vote Labour or Lib Dem. That's the truth of it.
No, I think you've probably hit the nail on the head there and where you stand at the moment. But look, you've talked about how life has changed since Brexit with some passion. Is that going to be a driver, do you think, to up those numbers of people who might register to vote, do you think?
Well, I hope so.
But do you think there's time? We've got an election on July the 4th.
I think it is. Yeah, it's going to be difficult time-wise, quite frankly. And we have been actively doing it for several months, as I mentioned, in terms of trying to raise awareness about voter registration. And it's a lengthy process as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I applied to the local council. They couldn't find my details. And there's stories about people having to swear affidavits.
It's going to be I think very difficult to persuade a lot more people to register in the short time we've now got. And the change.
What was it like in 2019?
2019, it was very difficult then. But people are now saying, well, of course, you've now got all these people who've been here more than 15 years. That's going to make a massive difference. I don't think it will. It doesn't mean that.
Well, it could make a difference in marginal seats, though, in key marginal seats.
Okay. Well, perhaps I can come back to that. But the fact is that even if you double the number of Brits who are able to vote, it doesn't mean the number who register to vote will double, because an awful lot of those people have been away from Britain so long. They've lost touch with any constituency, so it's going to be very, very difficult for them to be able to register and get through the hurdles that you have to get through to do so. Secondly, there's an awful lot of Brits. I've spoken to many here, and you say, how long have you lived away from Britain? And they've said 30, 40, 50 years.
Exactly.
They've lived in Africa, they've lived in Hong Kong or wherever.
We're getting pressed for time, and I think a really important question to ask you. Are you getting any support from your political parties to reach the vote? Have you had any MPs contact you? Is anyone going to say we're going to come and talk, for example?
Yes. They occasionally come overseas and they do tours and so on. Up to now, we've had mainly digital video Q&As with them, so sessions.
So they're making some effort.
Yeah.
Some effort, but we are trying to coordinate now.
Do you want more?
There is.
Effort?
Yeah, I think more effort, but there is Labour does have a system for dealing with this. We do have, through Labour International, the ability for anyone who's having difficulty in registering to have people who will assist them in doing that, and also to put them in touch with a particular constituency where they might want to apply for a proxy vote, and they might not know anybody, but they may be able to put them in touch with someone who can act as a proxy vote, because it's probably a waste of time voting by post if you live in Spain. Because by the time you get your paper, by the time you get the voting, it may be too late to send it back.
Tony, Stuart, we could go on for hours. Very lively discussion. Thank you very much for joining us here on Westminster Watch here in lovely Javier. Thank you.
Thank you.
With up to 3.2 million expats eligible to vote for the first time in the July 4th general election, it's not clear that the parties have a plan on how to reach them. Despite the largest ever extension of the franchise, it's not at all clear whether voters will even register to vote, let alone vote at all. One thing that is certain, that the major political parties have to up their game if they are to persuade expats to back them. Thanks to all my guests joining me here in Javier for our first international edition of Westminster Watch on the Road. And if you want to tune in to more lively debate, don't forget to check out our website, TRT World. In the meantime, from all of us and the team here at Westminster Watch, thank you for watching.